and welcome. I'm Tracy Scott, founder of the Codes and Magic Apothecary and creator of the Reinvention System. And now, podcaster. As the unconventional alchemist, I've added this to my list of things that I want to get out there into the world because my mission is big. The one I accepted when I was born was to follow my own rhythm and then teach other people how to uncover theirs. My path was challenging, and I've landed in a place where I've let go of my attachment to doing things the way others think they should be done. I honor my needs for rest and replenishment, and now I want to spend more time exploring my need for play, hence the podcast. We are connected to ancient, powerful forces that will not be extinguished. You feel it in your bones, in your blood, in your heart, in your belly, and you follow your own rhythm. You cannot be rushed or forced. You cannot be held back when it is time to burst forward. I thought it would be fun to record conversations with my friends who are also connected to these powerful forces and expressing them in exciting, modern ways. We'll experiment with all things around health and healing, and you can play with what works best for you. Take what resonates, come back for more, and I guarantee there will be a ton of laughs. So we are back, and it is a doozy this week. It's long, it's full of laughs, it's full of information. I think you'll have a blast meeting my friend Candice and listening to us talk about all things ADHD. It's something that we both have, used to struggle with, still struggle with, have lots of insights and solutions to share from our own experiences, working with clients, things like that. So sit back. You might want to make yourself a cup of tea or make your favorite beverage, maybe even grab a snack and put your feet up and enjoy. So we're back for our next guest, and we have Candice here today, who I'm trying to remember when we met. It's probably been a few years maybe, because we met virtually to start with in some groups that we have in common. And yeah, so I thought, why don't we start with, maybe you can just introduce yourself a little bit, kind of what you're up to, because things are changing a little in your world right now too. So, and then I think we'll get into it. So we're going to be talking all things ADHD today.
Ooh, I know it's a spicy topic.
It
It's a crazy topic, especially when you have two people with ADHD that are trying to talk about it. All right, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Candice Langlois. Some people know me as Ignite Your Balance in my business world. It's so funny when people ask, what do you do? I still have this hard, it's hard still to contain it to like a small little thing, because
don't have to. I think that needs to start changing, because we are, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
Multi-stream incomes. We wear many hats, and I think we need to, even though we're going to use the label of ADHD, we get so caught up in our labels too. So just let it out, whatever it is you want to share that you're doing. It doesn't matter what it's called.
Well, and it's also true what you said before, is that this is evolving as well. So we'll call myself a retired engineer. So I quit corporate world. I'm about, now we're talking 2005. So wow. 7 years ago now. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. No, I lied. Take that all back. Not 2005. 2015. Seriously, guys, here's a prime example of the ADHD brain in action for you.
And I just went with it too. So it's
and you're like, I'm like thinking to when my son. So my son was 4, so that would have been 2019. So 2019, I quit. That's a better time frame. I was like, no, I haven't been doing this that long. 2019, I quit corporate world. And I was an industrial engineer, project manager, high stress environment. And I moved into doing some virtual work, some virtual assistant work, supporting other people, and so that I could create space for me to evolve into an energy worker of sorts. Really, following my intuitive path, trying to find myself in all of that. And I was introduced to essential oils and that, so that became part of, who I was. And so I further developed my intuitive, call them powers, my magic. And, I've been doing Reiki and body talk, along with, essential oil treatments and stuff like that, for my clients. And even now that's evolving into much more, I want to say, on the spectrum of serving people with mental health, those who can't be supported or don't like to be supported by talk therapy, and supporting the brain in general. And so we're moving down that path. I'm still doing all the things that I do. I've partnered with a different company in terms of support tools and products, and then also too in 2023, I'm going to be evolving some of my services, diving into a new course and things like that. So for me, I'm going to call myself an evolution in energy and magic.
I definitely do think that's especially where, I'm not going to just say women, but I think it's just predominantly women. I think it's this grouping of us that are moving into this more alternative, holistic healing. Not moving into it. We've been in it for a while, but kind of in the closet to an extent. Like we were doing it ourselves and looking after ourselves and our families, but now we're kind of coming out to the world because look at the world we're in. It's pharmaceuticals and systems are not necessarily our friend. They have their time and place, but we don't have to explain that here.
No, but I also think too, it's important to talk about, especially with regards to like the neurodivergent brain and things that we're going to talk about, is that historically the way to be successful was to put yourself in a box. And in the corporate world, it's a very masculine energy, and it's a box that you need to fit into. And I think we're moving beyond that. And a lot of us who were unable to fit into that box successfully or feel whole or complete or good about being in that box have now decided to move out of that box and do other things, because alternative therapies and alternative ways of thinking are becoming much more mainstream.
Yes, I love that. So let's talk then maybe a little bit about our experiences with diagnosis to start with, because I think our stories are quite different that way. I don't actually have the official diagnosis in that sense. So my experience started more I wasn't even aware of it. So early on in school, the feedback to my parents always report cards and teacher meetings and things was always like, can you take her to the doctor and get her medicated? She can't sit still. She's always doing, and they're just like, they didn't buy into it for whatever reason, and just give her something to do. That's what we do at home. And he kind of swept it under the carpet, but it was also 1975, 76. It was a long time ago. So that was it wasn't really a thing. So it was never discussed, nothing. So it was just something I learned to kind of live with in some ways. But then not, because it was always so frustrating not understanding the way I was and the way I do things and being made fun of for it constantly. And then to, finally figure that out as an adult, what it actually was just very eye-opening. And then being able to start having, using some tools. So I know your experience is very different in that sense, in that you have gone down a more of an adult diagnosis route and things like that, which I think would be very interesting for a lot of people to hear about.
So interesting enough, as a child, and this is where I think a lot of people need to understand, especially for women and girls, that what typically ADHD looks like, you don't see those traditional symptoms, especially as kids, right? So I was not like you. I was not fidgety. I was quiet. I was silent. I was the student that my parents didn't need to worry about. I got good grades. I studied. I did all those things. It didn't start to come out until probably, full out hormones hit in my teenage years. And so 17-ish, I ended up with what we thought was like, they didn't know at the time, but I was having like heart palpitations, and all of a sudden I'd be like crying, like no rhyme or reason. And so I, went to the doctor, I went for therapy, and they diagnosed me as having a panic attack disorder. So, and it really got formalized. Like, it took a couple of years, like, before it got formalized. And I tried medications. I was medicated for a while, had a lot of problems with medications, and the side effects, really feeling basically like I either had the panic attacks and all of that I dealt with, or I was almost like high all the time and nothing mattered. And who cares?
Yeah, you can't live your life from those extremes, right? Like, it just
no,
work.
very difficult to function. So I myself, once I got into university and saw that this was going to be a problem, I myself took it upon myself. I took it upon myself to actually investigate alternative therapies. So going to see a chiropractor, going to yoga, learning breath work, like doing other things to what I thought was support the panic. So I did all of that. That became something that was, part of my day. And also seeking therapy. I continued to do that, some support groups, things like that. And I weaned myself off of daily medication and only had like breakthrough medication when I needed it. And I got really, really good at doing all the things, moving forward. And it wasn't until, so I graduated with my first degree and then went on to my second degree, which is actually in industrial engineering. And it wasn't until I hit 25 that my hormones started, and my hormones changed all of a sudden, just like with a snap of a finger. And I put on a bunch of weight. Some other things started happening, and I thought, that's fine. My panic attacks didn't seem to be too bad. I had some bad ones here and there. So, toddling through life, graduate, jobs, working. I had some blips here and there in terms of, we'll call them the emotional breakdown moments, when things got really bad, but nothing that I thought needed extreme help, we'll say, right? Well, it wasn't until after my son was born and I was back working, I was 37, that we started to some issues with my hormones again, and they diagnosed me as perimenopausal.
Right.
And so that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you in a minute why hormones are important with ADHD. Okay. And so things started to shift. And of course, then I started to become a little bit more emotional and things like that. And we all thought, oh, well, this is hormone related, right? Even my doctor, hormones.
It's a very easy label, the perimenopause bucket.
Yeah. Yes. So now what ended up happening is then I ended up going through a really difficult time at 39. And I ended up going back to therapy. I took some time off of work. And we went through a whole bunch of, testing with my doctor and things like that. And well, my therapist, lovely as she is, was also ADHD. And the very first appointment I walk in and she's like, you don't have panic attacks. Yeah. You are so self-aware, and like, I don't even half the stuff I don't even need to tell you. We're just like having a conversation with friends, but friend, you are ADHD and with generalized anxiety. And so what we
together,
did, right? Oh yes, like besties. And she's like, you've been misdiagnosed, like so clear as day. Misdiagnosed. And so she was able to do the formal testing. Now, I will tell you, as adult ADHD, do I have a formal diagnosis from a ADHD doctor that says I have ADHD? No, because it is absolutely asinine what is required of you.
I'm glad you brought this up, because I think this is really good for people to know.
Yeah. From the medical system as an adult, in order for me to officially, like with all the bells and whistles, like paperwork, to get an official diagnosis as an adult at the time with the everything that I had at hand, resources, it was going to cost me $1,800 to go see a guy in like a specialist who would conduct the exact same test that my therapist was certified to conduct, and him to write on a piece of paper and sign off and sign his signature and say, yes, you had ADHD.
Because then at the end of the day, like, what does that even do? Like, to get that official diagnosis?
So aside from, like, I mean, I guess work-wise, had I continued to work, the official in my file diagnosis gives me the ability to have support systems in place.
Sure.
And for people who need that, that's 100% what you should do. If you need that on file with your work, with whatever, as being, because that gives you, like, I guess you get labeled within the working with a disability or a challenge category, which is wrong.
Yeah,
which is wrong.
Been, I think in hindsight would have helped me so much in the corporate world per se, because working in like an open environment and things like that, like I thought I was going insane working in a corporate world just because I was so overstimulated. I didn't have any space to myself. I'm really sensitive to noise as well. And it just fuels the anxiety and then all these things. And then you start getting all these behavioral issues coming up on, with your boss and things like that, because you can't sit at your desk and I never know where you are. And I'm like, it's just like, I can't. And then they would let us work from home, things like that. So it's just.
So yes, it's beneficial that way. But I will say this. And in the last couple of years, have things changed? I don't know, especially with, the state of the universe, possibly. But I will say this, when I was, and this is part and parcel to why I left corporate world, the stigma around any sort of thing that was against the norm. And I want to state this for anybody who's listening who does not understand the ADHD world and what the term neurodivergent means. We are not disabled. Our brains just literally work differently than yours. So yours, goes A plus B equals C, and ours goes A plus C over to D, E, F, G, and then back to B. Like,
if it even remembers to go back to B.
Yes, if it even remembers. It's not, we're just wired differently. So it's not that we actually have a disability or an issue.
Sorry.
It's okay. A disability or an issue or anything like that. It's more or less that we just function, we think differently. That's all.
Yeah.
And so corporate, I will tell you, was very difficult to deal with. They don't have an understanding, like on short term and HR, they don't have an understanding that mental health wise, trying to navigate all of that information, trying to figure out how to function, trying to figure out all those things is very overwhelming. And it's not like you have a broken arm and you can be like, oh, in 6 weeks I'll be back and I will work exactly the same or better. They can't see it.
No.
So their whole goal is to get you on modified. Their whole goal is to get you back into the job. And they don't really care that what you might be experiencing prevents you from doing the job you have.
Yeah, that was my experience in the corporate world too. And ultimately was fired for it. Let go, made redundant, whatever you want to call it. But
and for me, because of the same experiences, I've had my mental health, like with my panic attacks and that, I used to hide it because I had it used against me when I was honest, like literally, like HR inappropriate used against me. And did HR care? No.
That was my experience as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is also why, a lot of us hide things and don't say anything. So I chose to leave because it just wasn't, it was more of a tax than it was to be in the corporate world. Anyway, so once I got re-diagnosed as well, a little bit of time after that, once all my blood tests came back, and that they also discovered that I was in menopause at the same time, very early menopause at 39. And so the one thing I want to let people know is hormones for women make a huge difference in our ADHD. When we're having hormonal issues, so if we're at a hormonal imbalance or at those times during our cycle, okay, ADHD symptoms go through the roof. Like, it's a popcorn explosion of things in our brain. Literally, our brains explode.
Do you know, is it specific hormones? Is it a certain sequence of, do you know if it's?
So I am not yet aware. So I have just recently dove down this path, and in speaking with like naturopaths, my naturopath, I work with a naturopath who's amazing. And some reading and research on my own, it is ADHD symptoms become drastically worse in hormonal changes within women. So specifically outlined, they've seen huge changes and heightening, like worsening of symptoms during perimenopause, menopause.
It makes sense when you think of some work that I've dug into as well around hormones too, is that you think like men and women are just fundamentally different the way the hormones work. Theirs is basically a flat line, consistent all the time. Ours, up and down, which is natural for us, but it just leaves us open to so much variation and other things being able to impact it, where the men, long as they're healthy and everything, they're pretty stable. So they don't have the same swings. So then they don't get, then it doesn't get moved out into different labels and things like that just compound things. So so I don't know if it would be any ones in particular. I would strongly suspect that stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, the state of our nervous system probably does not help either, with most women often being kind of like the gatekeepers of their families and, having all those things happening as well. And then not traditionally looking after themselves.
Absolutely. And because ADHD is so closely linked to generally another mental health thing, so anxiety being the number, I think the number one, but there's like you can also have autism, you can also have bipolar, you can also have there's a whole flurry of things that can align with ADHD, which is also a problem because you now have a melange of symptoms that come together.
Yes.
And you've got to weed that out. So medication can be really tricky because what are you treating? If you don't get the right diagnosis, then the meds don't work.
And I would suspect that there are probably a lot of people walking around that are not on the right medications, that they've been, because I know like my own journey, there was flirting with the bipolar diagnosis as well too. And it was just like, no. And I always it never resonated with me. I was like, I see why you think that, but I don't think it's what it is.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are misdiagnosed because they miss the ADHD.
And medication's easy as well. We're pretty conditioned to reach for a medical pharmaceutical solution.
Well, it's the magic blue pill, right? Like if I take this, it will make me feel better and I will just be okay.
And I think masking my symptoms.
Right. And I think with ADHD, especially, just trying to get a handle on the fact that your brain is like on speed, like it's just out of control. Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Right.
And frustrating and all the things.
Exactly. And I want to state one thing. So in my journey, because I've had people ask me this, well, why didn't you go to the KMH, go to the mental health specialists in terms of help? Well, I did. I went to the KMH in Barrie, we'll say, and this is through your health benefits, free health benefits in Ontario. I went, and so I got an appointment, and it was with a therapist online. So you go there, and I get in the room, And I explained to her my situation. I said, listen, I'm looking to, find to get a formal diagnosis. My therapist has done all the actual testing. We have all the stuff. I said, I just need support with trying to figure out how to go about doing this, because I think that it's unfair that I need to pay $1,800 out of my pocket to get something formally stated in my medical records so that I could have that and so that I could get the support that I need. Right. Well, so she proceeded to tell me, well, did you have any issues in school? I said, no, I was a very good student. Okay. Do you have any, like, are you hyperactive? Like, she's going through the typical male symptoms, we'll call them. And I said, no, that's not the case. And she's like, well, can we get a hold of your report cards and all this stuff? And I said, no, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd have to go back. Like, I'm 39. Like, what do you want from me? Like, seriously. She's like, oh, your parents didn't keep any of that? I'm like, no. So she told me at the end of the day, without making a long story short here, at the end of the day, she told me, well, you can't be diagnosed. This is a medical trained professional, psychologist, I think it was. You can't be diagnosed with ADHD past the age of 12. So I would have had to have diagnosed you when you were 12. So there's no way you have ADHD now. And I was like, and she also goes, I can't diagnose ADHD in a half an hour. And I told her, I said, I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for what are our next steps? What do I need to do? Do we need sessions together? What do we need to do to figure this out? And I basically got poo-pooed and given the middle finger and told I was ridiculous.
Yeah, I've had that experience so often too, whether, in so many ways. It's just, it's not, and you're just not normal. And because mine was the same, like my issues in school, I wasn't a bad student either. I just finish my work and I'd start wandering around and talking to people and trying to help them do stuff. And that was disruptive to the teacher because I'd be moving around. And that's why my parents be like, just give her something to do, like let her clean the chalkboards, or that so dates me, but give her a book, let her sit in the corner. Like I would do that sometimes. Like I wasn't that, that little boy running around being completely hyperactive either. So I get it. Yeah.
But that's the thing. And thankfully my therapist had a really good relationship with a doctor in town. And I ended up switching doctors because they would converse together, and basically that's how I started to get the support that I needed. Awesome. And this doctor was also very much into natural therapies. So she was like, okay, we can try meds, which we did, but also here are some other suggestions. Or when I came to her and said, I'm trying this and it works, she's like, oh, that's amazing. Okay, great. You just make a note in my file and we'd go about our way. Right. Like, so I think it's very difficult to anybody who's listening who think that they might have ADHD or do, and they haven't gotten the support you need. You're not crazy.
No,
it is very difficult. So the more you can do research yourself, the more you can talk to people who also have it, the more you'll be able to find things that are going to help and support you.
And I do think it's funny too, because I was talking to a mutual friend this morning, and which I already showed to you before we got online, but one of the things she said to me when we were chatting was, it just seems like more and more people I know have ADHD, because I just hear about it more. And I was like,
it's hereditary though.
Yeah, I told her that. And then she said to me, she goes, I also wonder, do you have some interesting ideas about, is there something bigger going on? I said, well, we'll park that for the end, because that's where I want to go with you at the end with my thing we were going to talk about, is that I do think there is something bigger going on. I could be crazy, but who knows? But yeah, so where I was going with that too, is I also think some of it is some of the stigma, I believe, is kind of going away, that people want to be aware and that they don't necessarily want to have medication. Or like you said early on, not everybody wants to do talk therapy. It's also hard to access and expensive. And there's other things that can be done. A lot of, like you were talking about, natural ways to do things. There are tools you can put in place to help you and all those kind of things. Maybe that's a good place we could kind of segue into some of the things that we do to help us. As much as I think some of it too is also just giving yourself permission to laugh at yourself as well, and to not be too hard on yourself, and to be forgiving, because we can be really hard on ourselves because we do things very abnormally at times compared to most people. And it can be challenging. Like I can remember not that long ago, I was talking to you one day and I said, I gave you the list. I'm like, okay, so something's already boiled over on the stove. I left the freezer lid open for hours. And then something else had happened in that day too. And I'm like, it is what it is. And I try not to beat myself up for it. It happens a lot, but it is what it is.
9 days out of 10, you can find my coffee mug in the microwave.
Yeah.
Because I reheated it and forgot about it. And Jay, my husband, Jay, for years, we've been married 17 years, and he still to this day opens the microwave and shoves something in and knocks over the coffee. He's like, you'd think by now I would learn to check the microwave and go, oh, it's there.
Yeah, I understand that. So what are some of your tools that you use, or not even tools, but just processes, products, all those fun things, systems, because there's a lot of things out there that can help us.
Yes.
And so I think that's our special, I don't know if did we talk about this, we might have already, but what a neurodivergent brain actually is.
No, let's go. I was just going to say,
let's go there first.
Yeah.
This is a problem when we do a non-scripted conversation between two people with ADHD that are very similar in the way that we exhibit it as well. Because if we go there too, but we have had conversations where we actually have personas that we identify with as our ADHD that are quite interesting as well. But
yeah.
And we'll go there because it's our way of describing kind of what it feels like for us.
I'll let you have the floor on this one.
Well, I resonate with your description, but because you already have it, and I feel like I was more like that when I was younger too, when I didn't understand it as much. I always say that mine is very much like Curious George, and a lot of people may not understand that reference depending on their age, but it's a series of books that was, I can't even remember, it was The Man in the Yellow Hat. I don't even know if he had a name. I think that's what you called them. And Curious George,
The Man in the Yellow Hat, that's right.
Yeah, and Curious George was his monkey that was always, he was just curious and always getting into things. That's me. I'm always like very interested in how things work. So from an early on, like I often used to pull things apart when I was a kid. Like I'd get my dad's tools out and pull things apart. I wouldn't put them back together again because, so those kind of things, I was always like pull it apart. I want to see how it works. It translated even when I even worked as a product manager with medical products. I was trying to pull them apart and break them and things like that. I'd be like, I just want to see if I can break it. It's just odd. So that's one of mine. So I go down rabbit holes, but then I'll come back. Like I'll forget. Like I might miss an appointment because I'm doing that, or things like that. So it gets me, like Curious George gets me into a lot of trouble some days if I don't manage it.
And I think from a neurodivergent brain perspective, we all have our little quirks. Like you said, some of ours are very similar. Some of ours are very different. I'm a visual, out of sight, out of mind. So if it's not top of mind, if it's not in front of me, this is something as well. We can often be considered messy, but the problem is that a lot of times the reason that there's stuff all over the place is because that's the only way we can remember to do something.
I do that as well. Piles of things.
Yeah. Everywhere. So for me, my neurodivergent brain is very out of sight, out of mind. But I can tell you, listen, we remember things like, in such great detail. I can tell you where I packed the purple paperclip 2 years ago when we moved, and it's at the bottom of this Rubbermaid container over here. And nobody else will ever remember that, but I will.
Yeah.
And I can still remember, you know what I mean? So we have very quirky memories, we'll call it. And I think it's because when our attention gets shifted away, there's only times where our brain decides to hold on to a lot of stuff. So I'll share, because you alluded to it, I will share what I call
You don't
my,
have to.
no, I will. I talk about it all the time.
I know you did.
So, I always tell people my brain is a rabid squirrel on acid at a rave.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? And I'm like, listen, rabid squirrel on acid at a brain. He's like, my brain's just going, bah! And I mean, if you're listening to me right now, I get into these moments. See, I just caught myself. I get into these moments where I talk louder and I talk really fast. And that's because I get really excited about something I'm talking about. And previously, nobody would tell me that I would do this.
Right.
Or I get yelled at. I'm like, Candice, stop yelling. Candice, stop talking so fast.
I used to get to stop talking so loud all the time.
Yeah, but we don't hear ourselves.
No.
So I think from a neurodivergent brain perspective, because the neurodivergent brain works differently, our frontal cortex is not enabled in the same capacity that it is a regular, I'll call it a non-neurodivergent person, neuroregular person. And if you look at, they've done, this is really cool, you can even Google this, they've done brain scans to see the activity levels, and our frontal lobe, our frontal cortex there, it's just like little tiny spots, like for the most part dead in the water. And that's our executive functioning that kind of lags behind. I like to equate our executive functioning skills like dial-up internet. It's there.
That's a great,
but it's slowly going. And sometimes it completely shuts down and checks out. So there's a lot of things that, you know, we don't do intentionally, we don't hear, we don't see. And I think it's just a little bit about it's about patience with us, because none of what we do is actually intentional. No. It's literally our bodies don't communicate with our brain. Our brains don't communicate with our bodies or our mouth or our ears or our eyes. And so we literally are doing the very best that we can in every aspect.
I love that. Because we beat ourselves up for it, because we know it, like I said before, like it gets us in trouble, but it's just like late for things or whatever it is, forgetting, like just, I can't tell you how many times, like I have, working from home, and we'll have the plan for, what's for dinner tonight? And I'll be like, making this, and Kevin will get home. And I'm like, it didn't happen. I don't know, the day's gone. Didn't happen. Lots of other things happened, but that didn't happen. I might still be in my pajamas too.
And so something to tell people who may not be or have neurodivergent people in their life. For us to get up, I tell people this, for me to get up, I'll use myself as an example. For me to get up, get my son ready and out the door for school, my husband will help, but we have our roles. Then to get my supplements in, to get my hormones, to get my to grab my coffee. Oftentimes I forget to eat because our brain doesn't tell our body that we're hungry. I will showering, brushing our teeth, washing our face, oftentimes becomes not a priority because all these other things need to get done, but also it's from a perspective of self-care, we don't prioritize that. Like, unless I'm like, oh my God, my head's itchy because I haven't washed my hair in a week and a half, or oh my God, I stink. Like, seriously, somebody like put me in the shower. Sometimes I don't even realize that I haven't had a shower for 3 days.
Right. I get that.
And I think people think, oh my God, you're so dirty, you're so whatever. I'm like, no, my brain doesn't register any of this. So literally having a visual cue, like reminders on my phones to be like, did you do this today, is like, or the visual of like the toothbrush sitting on the counter. Oh yeah, I didn't brush my teeth this morning. Okay, go brush my teeth. Is one of those things. And so it's very difficult and challenging when someone is non-neurodivergent or neuronormal, neurotypical. Keep going back.
That's right. I couldn't remember what it was.
It's neurotypical and neurodivergent. Neurotypical trying to understand a neurodivergent brain. You're never going to understand it. You just have to accept that it is what it is, like with us, just like so I'm going to tell you this too. We have to accept for ourselves that we are neurodivergent and different, and it is what it is. Because I will tell you, because we get told throughout our entire lives, don't do this, you're this, we're labeled all kinds of things which aren't true. We have a whole stigma of ourselves that we have to go through and shed in order for us to accept that we are the way we are, and it's okay.
Yeah. That's been such a big piece of it for me. I can remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago working with a coach, and it came up because as I can't remember, she was asking me to do something, and I was like, I'm going to do it this way because of this. And she's like, the label, don't buy into it, and things like that. I'm like, that's because she's neurotypical. She doesn't get it. You can't understand. It's also the same person who's seeing it, and a lot of other people now too. But I'm just like, it is a label that I have to use in that sense because people understand what it means. And it just normalizes it for me that it's okay. That, the days when things are boiling over, like that day that it happens, like I'm sitting 2 feet away from it. I can hear it, but it doesn't, my brain just doesn't comprehend. Like you said, the executive functioning isn't there to go, that's something boiling on your stove that may burn your house down. But I'm over here doing something else going, I hear it, but it's just a background noise to me. No comprehension of what it is until I walk over there and go, oh my God.
And this is the one thing, our brains have the ability to do 2 things at once. So this is where I tell people, I'm like, you may think ADHD is a downfall, but man, we have superpowers that literally would blow your mind. And one of those things is like, our brain knows that that's happening over there, and we are hyper focused on X. So we have the ability for our brain to process 2 different things at the same time. That is a superpower. Now, does it get challenging when the thing that is processing over here and it doesn't deem as important as the thing I'm focusing on doing now? Yes, that's where that disconnect comes in, because for neurotypical people, their attention would be diverted back over to that thing that's making noise on the stove, and they go, oh, I should do something about it. Our brain goes, hang on a second, I gotcha, I can do 2 things at the same time. But we don't have the ability to understand which one is more important in that moment.
That's a really good way to describe it.
So yes, the neurodivergent brain, if we've broken it down into some fun antics for you.
Hopefully that helps too. So I know, let's talk maybe some more about the things that we do to help us. So you already mentioned one. I use timers a fair amount, especially when I'm cooking, because it is a problem for me cooking. Like, even so much as I do this constantly too. So I'll make myself a cup of tea. So I hear the kettle, obviously, when it goes off. If I get to it, that's fine. But I set a timer for when it's done brewing. But very often I will make it, walk away, go do it, and then sit down and go, oh, did I make myself a cup of tea? And it's still sitting over on the counter. Every day, that probably happens at least once.
Hence why I reheat coffee several times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do that with my tea too.
Yeah.
And my water.
It's constant.
If you've ever seen,
I haven't figured out how to remind myself necessarily to bring it with me, but microwaves helps. But I find timers work too for me for appointments, especially once I have like a standing appointment in my calendar. For example, like a personal training client, especially if they're twice a week and it's been 4 years and it's the same thing. Those appointments I have no problem with. But if it's something different, like for today, I put an alert on it. Sometimes, depending on what it is the day before, if there's something I might have to get ready before, or it might be an hour before, or it might be leading up to, because I do have a habit of not showing up for things if I haven't done that. And I get the call going, you're supposed to be somewhere. And I'm just like, sorry. Oops. I'm on my way, hopefully, depending how far away it is or whatever it is. But But I know you have some other things that you do, and maybe even some products we might want to talk about in your great new relationship with AQ Science, because I know people are interested in this and it's so new to Canada. This might be such a great opportunity to speak about it. If you
That
want to
would be absolutely.
Let's
Okay,
do it.
so in terms of tips, I'm the same with you. I'm reminders, appointments and stuff like that. I always tell people, if it's not in my phone,
Yeah,
it does not exist in my world.
doesn't happen.
So don't give me a piece of paper with it on a note. Don't leave me a voicemail. Don't text me. Well, you can text me because then I can create, like a calendar appointment. Don't do any of that, because if it's not in my phone, it does not exist. So that's my Bible.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I have to have alerts. And I do 2 different alerts usually. I do like the day before if I need to prep something, but then I also do a alert when I need to be leaving the house, but I do it like a few minutes before I need to leave the house. So I have an appointment that, let's say, that's 30 minutes away. I will do the alert 45 minutes before the appointment, because I will need 15 minutes to get my stuff together in a rush, because I totally forgot that I had it.
I used to do it, especially when I was traveling to clients. I would, instead of having the alert, I would actually set an appointment to say, this is my travel time, which would have its own alert. And it would, to give me that window too of, otherwise I'll be late if I don't have that 15 minutes to pull my stuff together.
Yeah. And I do that all the time. And I tell people, I'm like, I'm not generally super late, but 5 minutes is my normal. And and I always tell people too, if this is a hard and fast, oh my gosh, if you're not here at this time, we shut the doors and lock you out, tell me that I need to be there half an hour before, because I will. Although I do have to say, I've never been late for an interview or an exam ever in my entire life.
Interesting. There's certain things like that for me too.
Or the airport as well. There's just certain things that I would I won't sleep the night before, because I'll be
that's the problem. That's what happens.
But I've never been late for those important things.
Me neither.
So that's interesting. So I use alarms. I use a lot of grace. Candice, you know what?
It's okay. Important.
You're doing your best.
Well, it's also too, you're like me too. You've got more than one person in your house. And everybody, like we talked about before, everybody's got their own unique ways of exhibiting. So same with me, Kevin is as well. And we exhibit completely differently. So it's having grace for him and for me.
Yes, it's you need to find the ability to be adaptable to the situation without taking it personally. Go, okay, that made me angry. I'm upset about this, or I'm embarrassed, or whatever. But there's this you have to really get in touch with your feelings, I think, is something, and that's really, really important in understanding that it's okay to feel bad or guilty or whatever, but you can't allow that to beat yourself up because you have tried your best, or that other person has tried their best, right? And you start to figure out ways to work around those. It's a trial and error kind of life.
It is. And I think
you fail a lot.
I think what you said earlier too, it's the more you can start sharing it with people and asking those questions, is this a hard and fast, you're going to lock the door, or it has to start at this time because I'll be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if, you just have to, learn
communication.
Yeah. You need to learn to be able to speak about it and just say, hey.
And I think that's where the self-awareness comes into play. So that goes into some of the things like yoga, and I can't meditate. I'll say this. People say meditation. I say, if you can meditate, now I know you can meditate, Tracy.
I know. And we've talked about this before. For me, it was really a struggle to get there, because I thought meditation had to be the transcendental stillness. I have to do guided meditations.
Yeah, and guided meditation.
Then there are days, I'm at the point now where there's days I can go with it. I'm in a week where it's not working for me though. that it's like, it's kind of in and out. And I'm just like, it is what it is. At least it's getting me some stillness, even if I'm not following this and maybe getting to a brain wavelength that would be a little bit maybe more beneficial, but it doesn't matter.
So I'm going to say what I deem meditation in my world are a few different things that people are going to go, this is ridiculous. Okay. So
no, first and foremost, for me, workouts are meditation.
Yes. So for from formal meditation, my best method that I have now discovered is sound bathing.
Yes.
Sound bathing is like, for some reason I can lay there and just, oh my God, my body, my mind stills, and it's glorious. Guided meditation amps my brain up into creative mode. I go on my own disastrous adventure, and it's not necessarily always a good thing.
No, so I understand that.
Yeah, it can make me very anxious depending on what's going on in my world, in my life. I also can't just sit there in silence. Silence is the death of my soul, literally. It's very difficult for me to sit in silence in a room. I was the person who had the TV or the radio on when I studied.
Me too.
Libraries are like the most horrific place you could send me.
We talked about this, I think, one day. My study place when I was in university was more like a cafeteria where there was lots of people.
Or a cafe.
Yeah, or that.
Yeah. And again, so I will take that back. I equate it to, I tell people, in order for me to have that super focus and be able to sit at a task and do it for a long period of time without my brain checking out, I need a distraction for the other part of my brain. So I need those dual tasks, right? So silence is death to me. So I love sound bathing. I love listening to music just in general, anything that really I love. And then the third thing is that I like to just turn on the TV and zone right out. That is a meditation for me.
It is for me too. I've said that so many times when I used to be working at the gym and doing basically split shifts. I'd be there really early in the morning and I was there fairly late at night. That was kind of like my meditation in the afternoon, is I'd put something on TV for an hour and just sit there. Sometimes I'd fall asleep, but that was my time to just go, I'm checking out for a little bit.
And TV, movie, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're watching, it literally, for the neurodivergent brain, I don't know anybody who's neurodivergent who this doesn't happen to. It is like your whole brain is like, goodbye. We're not thinking about anything else. We're not doing anything. We're just like in vegetative, peaceful calm. The squirrel has decided it's going to have a nap phase.
Do you find, I don't know if we've even talked about this before. I find for me, I don't often remember anything that I watch on television.
Yep. I can watch the same thing multiple times and I don't remember.
Kevin does though. So I think that's where ours is different. It's almost like he remembers everything.
And so here's another thing that might be different. So I have a hard time I watch a lot of like rom-coms, really ridiculously cheesy stuff. I have a very difficult time with anything that is like violent or extremely intense or serious or anything like that, because I feel it.
I understand that.
I feel like I literally feel it. And so this will go towards the ADHDs that are empathic and intuitive, and a good portion of us are, whether you want to admit it or not, it's there. And so I have to watch because I literally feel it. And then Candice does not sleep. Like there's no horror movies in my life.
Me neither.
Ever.
Me neither.
Because we are sleeping all the lights on and I'm not sleeping by myself at home in a bed, period.
I understand.
Like, so I will say this. Yes. Does it help for meditation and zoning out? I think for all of us, we probably have our preferred things that we like to watch. But when I totally zone out, I couldn't tell you half of what was happened, and hence why I can watch movies and shows over and over again.
That's what I always say. It's great because I can watch something and I can watch it multiple times and it doesn't bore me because I don't remember most of it and I get different pieces. I know it drives some people because we'll go to a movie and Kevin, don't you remember this? No, I won't even remember that we've even seen it.
Oh, I will remember that. I'll remember that, but somebody will go, oh, like if they start describing a particular scene or something, I might remember it that. But if they're like, oh my God, tell me all about it, I'll be like,
That's hard.
so there was this guy and they went here and this happened and that's about it.
I love it.
That's all I got.
I love it.
So yeah, but I use that as a meditation. I use like exercise, outdoor time, like being outside, grounding techniques and stuff.
Those are big for me too.
I use those not like so much as a meditation, but more as a to calm the racing mind and calm my anxiety more. And I think that's where it separates into more the anxious feelings kind of thing. That calms the anxious feelings. And so it calms my mind and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So we'll move on from there. Also, one last thing. Huge thing for neurodivergent people, and that is self-care. So we're talking like go for your massage, go see your chiropractor, go sit in the bathtub, self-care time for yourself to make sure that you do the things, and that includes showering, brushing your teeth, washing your face, doing whatever, making sure those are a priority for you, are huge for not only the anxiety but the ADHD itself. So
it's funny because I thought you were actually going to say nutrition, but we don't have.
I'm going to go there in a second.
Okay, we are going to go there too. So good. As long as we're going to go there, that's fine too, because that's another big piece as well.
Yeah. So that's actually what I was going to phase into, but more from what we'll call like the meditation self-care side.
Got it.
We're trying to see our brains. We're trying to keep it together.
I'm impressed with us so far, to be honest.
And organized. And I will tell you, for the people who are listening, Tracy and I both will be toast. Our brains will be fried by the end of this conversation. We'll be like, don't talk to us anymore. We're done for the day.
Yeah, this is my last thing I actually have to be on for today. And not that I have to be, I want to do this, but it'll be checkout time for me after this.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving into that, as you said, nutritional. So here's the thing. We know that our brain needs proper nutritions, omegas, to function properly. We also know, so this is where the hormones, the brain, the gut all aligns. Okay. Our gut is our first brain, whether you want to admit it or not. If our gut does not work properly, our brain is not working properly, and that's just the end of it. Our hormones aren't functioning.
Agreed.
So everything is connected and it just goes right out the window. So priority is a very good supplement. In today's day and age, we do not get the nutritional, you can't eat enough nutrition. This is the thing. We just don't get the vitamins and minerals that we need in our food anymore. No. So you need to make sure you are on a good supplement. I will start by saying that. I'll talk a little bit about things that I've discovered that I prefer, but we'll talk about just a good supplement. That's number one. Number two, you're going to need to make sure that you are getting, calcium and magnesium and B vitamins and your omegas. Now, something I have just recently learned, which I thought was amazing, is that oftentimes when we are taking our omegas, we're getting a lot of 6s.
Yes.
And the problem is with neurodivergence, we need more 3s.
I was going to say, do we need 3s or 12s? It's interesting.
3s. We need 3s.
Huh.
We don't get enough 3s. So we get enough 6s.
I didn't know.
And a lot of times when we take supplements, we get 6s, but we don't get enough 3s. So we need to, this is something to dive into. This is a research. I haven't fully gone down this rabbit hole yet. This is something I'm uncovering as well. Where I'm like, okay, I'm now going to have to go check my supplements. How much 3 am I getting? Is it enough? And I can't tell you what the amount is yet because I haven't gone all that way.
Yeah. And I would, even if we do go down there, I'm going to tell you to people, like the amounts are going to be different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Like I use myself as an example all the time, like having had gastric bypass surgery. I don't know what a normal dose is of anything for me, because I'm like, does that get absorbed in the section that doesn't work anymore? That's bypassed, or whatever, but
correct. And
yeah.
so it's going to be different, but even to be like, they say, you know, like
Mhm.
as a general rule of thumb, if you wanted to be like, how low am I? Like, am I like
Yeah.
really, really low, or am I like wherever? I'm going to say that, and obviously I'm not prescribing or, you know, telling you that this is what you need to do. If you are concerned, you need to make sure that, you know, because I don't know what anyone else is eating or taking
That's
or
right.
anything like that. You know, I run a lot of what I do by my naturopath to be like, hey, is this okay? What do you think? She knows
Mhm.
what's going on in my life, right? So that's number one, is making sure we have a good supplement. Number two is making sure that your omegas are on par, right? A lot of times we need to take a supplement for omegas. And then number three is looking at ways, I think, to take in natural products that are going to help you, A, keep your mind and body calm, and B, allow your frontal cortex to, your frontal lobe there, your executive function to kick in. So here's the funny thing. ADHD people like their coffee and tea and their caffeine. Why? Because it tells our frontal lobe to get moving. It's like the gas, like, okay, here we're gonna go.
Yep.
Now, does caffeine do a lot for our nervous system and a whole bunch of other things? Because then everything goes up and down and up and down. Yes, absolutely. But you can look into natural forms of caffeine.
Yes.
Okay. You can ensure that what you're taking and when you're using, we'll call those vitamins that give you more energy, nutritional things that give you more energy, that they're at the appropriate time. Are you sensitive to coffee or tea, black tea?
I'm only sensitive to coffee since so as a result of my gastric bypass surgery, I have an ulcer. Now I'm going to caveat it too, because I had an ulcer that was not healing, and I found that anything more than a couple cups of coffee was aggravating it. So I've been on a medication for a very long time. However, you're the first person I've actually even told this to. So a little while ago, I probably started, I don't know how long it's been now, maybe a few weeks. I started using a tincture that I made with fennel and anise, because I have a number of digestive issues because of the surgery, because just the food that we eat, like all the things, right? So I decided probably about 10 days ago to say, I'm going to see if I can stop taking my medication, because I love it. Like, I love it that it helps and it keeps me out of the hospital and that kind of thing. But all it does is reduce the acid in my stomach. It does nothing to help the ulcer. 10 days, not a symptom. Usually I'm 3 days without it, because I tend to forget to take my medication with ADHD as well. And I'm usually 3 days and I have symptoms. So I'm pretty happy about that.
That's amazing. So it's the acid and of the coffee. It's not the caffeine.
Yeah, it's not the caffeine. I drink tea, but I cut my caffeine off usually around noon, but that's more from my background in sleep quality and the long half-life of caffeine. And that, yeah, I can drink a cup of coffee and go to bed and sleep for 8 hours, no problem.
Okay.
Is the quality of my sleep great? Probably not as great as what it could be, because caffeine does impact the quality of your sleep.
And I would say as you get older, you might be able to see that. But as a general rule of thumb, I was illustrating a point here, is that natural caffeine, like in teas and coffees, and there's other sources of natural caffeine out there. My brain is not connecting the dots right now to say them. But natural forms of caffeine have a very different, they affect your body very differently than a synthetic version of caffeine. So when I in university, I was the person who could drink the whole pot of coffee, and I have never been able to pull an all-nighter in my life. Never. Partners and groups, when I did group work, were like annoyed the crap out of me, because they're like, we got to stay up, and I'm like 2:00 and I'm like literally passed out. They're like, Candice drank all the coffee and she's like done drooling on papers.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me either.
And And so I've never had an issue. I was never that person where it was like, if I had a cup of coffee at 8 o'clock at night and then went to bed and I didn't sleep, I slept. There was never any issues.
I never understood why people couldn't do that.
Well, and I also don't have like, oh my God, I'm having heart palpitations and it's from the coffee or anything like that, right? But let me tell you, somebody gave me one of, unknowingly, it was like here, I'm going to give you something to help. I didn't even think to ask. They'd given me like a synthetic like 5-hour power shot thing in some juice in that. And I thought my heart was going to explode out of my body and I was going to die. Okay. And so I stay away from there's no like energy drinks in my world unless they are 100% like natural. We're talking like natural fruits, vitamins, whatever.
It's not my world either.
Yeah. And I think that, and I've talked to a lot of neurodivergent people and they say the same thing. Natural caffeine does not affect them in the same way as it does synthetic caffeine. So I tell people to take note of this, because if you are trying to grab something to help you, natural caffeine for our brains is completely different than a synthetic. Go natural. Your body processes it differently because our brains, the receptors don't act the same. And it most likely will be better for you. I'm saying most likely because, again, I'm not a doctor or naturopath or whatever. This is based on what I know in my experiences. But listen to your body and all of this stuff, like really, because I think that's very helpful, because a lot of things that I have found that are good for ADHD that are natural have some sort of natural caffeine in them.
For sure. And there's other things, like if coffee is something that people don't want to do, there's other more natural energy.
Yes.
Like a host of functional mushrooms that you can put into drinks and things. That tends to be my go-to. I love all the functional mushrooms and putting them into different drinks and things like that. And you can get a great energy boost off of the right ones. Like there's so many different ones. You can get
vitamins are one one of those things, like
too, right?
Yeah, like orange juice is like a great, with the B vitamins, vitamin C, things like that in it. So anyways, my point being is that don't be afraid of natural caffeine as an aid. I was using coffee and tea because my brain was not going to. I have the list. It's upstairs.
It's okay.
Do you think I can remember them right now? No.
Doesn't matter.
Anyways.
We can have another conversation another day if we want to. So it's all good.
All right. So moving on to that. So I guess is there anything like specific nutritional things that you've found that work before I move on to maybe like some product stuff that has been working for me and my family?
I just think for me and even any clients I've worked with, I think it's just the right nutrition. They just help a lot of different things when you start finding the foods, the supplements, whichever that work best for you, because they work on so many different things. So not just your brain function or anything, but they help the quality of your sleep. And that all has an impact. Yeah. So I think it's just finding the right things for people that work for them. And the biggest thing I always just try to tell people is just the less processed, the better. Like try not to eat everything out of a box. Because it's fresh, and I've done it. There's just so many chemicals in there, whether you've got ADHD or not, that are just doing us such a disservice. But
and I will say the neurodivergent brain is more sensitive to chemicals in general than a neurotypical brain, and that's a huge thing.
You just especially with children. What about alcohol?
What about alcohol? I don't know, man, because I'm like Polish blood over here. And so I'm like, it's like vodka runs through my brains. I can hold my liquor well.
Yes, so can I. I don't do it very much anymore.
No, I don't either. And it's funny is that as I've been treating and treating my ADHD, supplementing, things like that. I may have a glass of wine, like as they say, a glass of wine, like let's talk European, a glass of wine a day, your little glass, whatever, is that going to be beneficial? Yeah, there's antioxidants, there's all kinds of beautiful things in there.
Yeah.
There's alcohol. To me, and the way I was brought up, alcohol is not a bad thing. You just need to learn and understand your limits, what your body thinks. Some people's bodies are just like, no, forget it. Like my husband doesn't drink.
Exactly.
No, forget it. I can't do that. Some people need it. I'm sorry. Some people are like, I shouldn't say need it. Some people are like, I can have 5 drinks and I'm fine and not be hungover or whatever. Some people, it just depends on your body.
Yeah.
I will say this though, and this is a me, because there's always another side of mental health with ADHD. When you're looking at the anxiety, when you're looking at anything else, alcohol can become the crutch that calms your body, and you're choosing that over getting outside, using your supplements, doing this, doing that. And so I would caution people at any point in time to ever use alcohol as the means to sit down and go, I'm so done with today, I need a glass of wine, and sit down and use that as that regular crutch.
I throw cannabis in there too for some people as well that are using it like a crutch. It's not that it has its time and place as well too, in different formats and all those things. That'll be a conversation for another day, but it's another one too, just to.
And I think that's, does it affect me from my ADHD perspective? Not to my knowledge.
Not to me either, I don't think.
I don't see, or at least people around me haven't told me that they see a difference in terms of that. I might think that the alcohol, tones down the anxiety and the rabid squirrel a little, so I might be a little bit more chill, and then of course things just come a little easier. Only to a certain point. But I think alcohol in general, though, you have to be really cautious about because of all the other things that we deal with.
It's a complicated thing anyways, right? Like it's not, because it's not just the constituents of the alcohol, it's everything that's going along.
All the things.
Because it's behavioral, there's lots of things. So let's use this segue then. Let's talk about Q Science, if that's the right name, I believe, right?
Yes.
And these lovely new products that you have discovered through them, which is funny that we were just kind of talking along the cannabis line anyways, not that these are, but they're, I'll let you introduce them as to what it is and how they work for you and your family.
So I will start by saying, like, I got really heavily into the all natural, not that I wasn't before using supplements and that, but I got really hardcore heavy into it just after my son was born, and I got into essential oils, and I still love my essential oils. We use them for all kinds of things. You will not find basically hardly any meds in our home at all.
The same. Cleaning products, same things.
I've basically a natural solution for everything, aside from, like, you may find some Advil and Tylenol, but that's it. Like, forget it. Everything else
is the same.
So I went down that road. I was using those very, very heavily in my home. We still use them very heavily for immune boosting and all kinds of things. But I struggled a lot of times with finding the perfect solution for my ADHD. And my son, as he's gotten older, in the last few years, we have discovered, we're working to get him, because he's at the right age, we're working to get him a formal diagnosis through our doctor, just so that he has that for himself, and for schooling, so he can get the support he needs. But I know, based on everything I see for him, I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyways, so between the two of us, and I'm pretty sure my husband might be as well, so it might be a trifecta in my house. Needless to say, I have now stumbled upon Q Sciences, and there's a ton of products they have, but I initially got into them because I was very curious about these terpenes. They're terpene elixirs, and terpenes are basically a plant chemical constituent, aka essential oil, but they've, through some technology, they've harnessed the monoterpenes, the terpenes in themselves out of the plants, but blended them together in a way, in a bottle that is super easy to take. So for the ADHD person, simplicity is key.
And so
Like,
I like tinctures. It's just
all
give
in
it to me in
one.
a dropper. It's all good.
Right. And that's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
So I started off with that curiously and went, so these have made, I can't even tell you, like, I almost, every time I talk about it, it almost brings me to tears of as to how amazing these products have been in my house. And so we use all the terpenes. There's 4 different terpenes elixirs that they have. They have chill, create, slumber, and comfort. We use all of them for different things, but specifically for ADHD, I use create, which is for focus and energy, every single day, every single morning. Just 1 dropper, down it goes. Okay. I can use more, but I don't need to generally. My husband uses chill because he's got more high anxiety. He uses chill every single day. Anybody who knows men knows that for them to admit that this shit works, aka this shit works, and I get phone calls from him going, oh my God, I forgot to take it. Can you bring it to work? He only works 10 minutes away from home. Can you bring it to work and just so I can have it? This is my life now, because he literally, he noticed for himself. I knew before, I could notice it within like 2-3 days that it, like a drastic difference. But for him to notice in himself, that's huge.
Yeah, that's massive.
Huge self-awareness.
And how powerful is that going to be for him now too, though, right? To say, look, I don't have to be this anxious person with all these things setting him off, only because we've talked about it before, but he doesn't have to be that person.
Right?
Which helps him in his business, which just helps him feel better in his day.
Wait, happy people are healthy people. Happy people are,
how you said that.
Right? Happy people are like, just they live longer lives, they live better lives. Like, it's all those things. So he, even if life isn't perfect, he's like literally noticed for himself, he's like, oh my gosh, I am like, yeah, the same shit's happening in my day, but I'm just not angry as much. I'm just not overwhelmed. I'm just not as frustrated, because he doesn't go into the fight or flight mode immediately. There's that point in time where he can go, I'm gonna think about this for a minute. I'm gonna process it. I'm gonna have an appropriate reaction, and maybe I'll even talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, which for me has been like, oh my God, where was this like 20 years ago? Like, seriously.
Do you know what it is then? Like, what is it in those terpenes? Like, what are they acting on? Do you know? Like, what are they doing for us?
Well, like, I mean,
if you don't know, that's okay.
No, like, I can't give you like
what
this specific thing in our brain
high level
targeting. But the thing is that, let's just think about this for a second. Plants innately have these ways of functioning and protecting and healing themselves, correct?
Yes.
They don't need medicine. They don't need this, whatever. They survive out in the wild. And our bodies are innately receptive to natural things. They have a very difficult time, which is why we end up with so many side effects when we introduce synthetics. Okay. We all know that plants are the original medicine, and synthetics were created off of natural things. So all we're doing is we're taking constituents of these plants that are calming, that allow our nervous system to be a little more stable, to allow us to be present. Like, they have all those abilities, right? And all we're doing is we're taking those, we're combining them into a little elixir, and we're saying, take this every day. And our bodies are going, oh, well, this is great. I know what this is. I understand how to use it, and I can absorb it really well.
Yes. Well, they call it it's bioavailable. It's very easy for your body to
Yes.
It's natural. Like you said, it recognizes it. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that pharmaceuticals are a bad thing. Like there was a time and there's a reason why we've done these synthetic things, and it makes sense for some things.
Yeah.
But I think the detriment comes when we ignore the bad things that it's doing.
Yeah. Because, and a lot of times though, too, with medicine, the good outweighs the bad. So we suffer because without it, we'd be so much worse.
Well, and two great examples that I see all the time with that. One of them is super extreme, but someone goes on antibiotics because they've got bronchitis. It's great that it gets rid of those bacteria, but it also gets rid of all other bacteria. And again, you talked about gut health in the beginning. That's where they all are when that's upset. It's why often when you take antibiotics, you end up with an upset stomach. And I think of almost like chemotherapy the same way. It's killing cancer cells or attacking cancer cells, but it's also normal cells.
Or the cells that help you stay healthy, right? It's killing everything inside. Yes. And this is where one thing that's that I love about Q Sciences specifically, the head doctor, who's Dr. Kimberly, who helps create or is at the forefront of creating all of these products, he's a medical doctor, but he's also a naturopath.
Nice.
So these things have come together from both a mindset of Eastern and Western medicine, the natural side and the, technology and advancement of science and all of that stuff. And he has an ability to look at it with a great perspective so that we're getting natural products that work really quickly and really well.
Nice.
And I think the thing is that when we go to alternative products, historically, a lot of times what's happened is they said, give it 30 days, give it 3 months, give it 6 months, and then you'll see the difference, right? It's going to take that long. And for most of us who are very naturally, or we're drawn to natural things, we're like, okay, we understand that. But for people who are having a really tough go with things, especially when it comes to mental health and our brain health and stuff like that, we need something that's going to help us now. And we don't need it to be perfect right away, but we do need it to be perfect. And we need it to work so that it takes that edge off. So it helps us get going and motivated to do more, right? Yeah. So these terpene elixirs have been fantastic. So my son, who's 8, he takes the chill and the create every single morning before he goes to school. And then we supplement as well. So I have now been on the Q Sciences Core, which is got chelated vitamins in it. If you know anything about that, Q Science's goal with all of their products is absorption. Okay. So there's so much in, so the reason their vitamins and their supplements are so much better in comparison to what you can get is because your body's able to absorb them. So they got methylated and chelated vitamins and minerals in their products. They look at it and go, how can even the broken body, the broken gut, absorb these things so we can help get them better, help make them feel better.
I love that. And
this core system, not only does it involve products that are insanely good for your mental health, but they have a digestion component to it. So, enzymes for your body so that it's helping your body digest food. As we age, we don't produce the amount of enzymes that we need to actually break food down, which is why we don't absorb the nutrients.
There's also a lot of people in this world walking around without gallbladders. And have a lot of trouble. So, we're always told, just don't eat a spicy diet. But they don't tell us that we can't actually digest fat very well.
No. And so that's going to help with all of that. They then have prebiotics and probiotics to make sure that you're still continuing to build a good gut biome, right, in your system. And then also to all of those general nutrients, vitamins and minerals that we need to have a healthy immune system, to ensure that we're getting everything that we need for our bodies.
They have collagen as well, right? I believe.
So the core system is
No, sorry,
just like their supplement. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So their core system is just that supplement. And so I take that, the glorious thing is that they come in little packets. So everything is for you. Now you can buy them in individual components if you needed to, but the 4 components that make up the core system, they come in 2 packets. One says AM, one says PM.
So would
You
they
open the
be
packet,
like
take it.
taking, like comparable to taking like a multivitamin? Is that what that is? Kind of like a
So you're
general,
getting
all covering kind of.
this is a full multivitamin system,
Perfect.
including your omegas. It is a digestive enzymes and digestive support. It is a pre and probiotic, and then it is a great for your mental health. So it's got like anything, like I used to take before I got pregnant, I used to take products for my to help support my mental health, like my overwhelm, my anxiety, that kind of thing. And basically it's that also in there. So it's a 4-part system. You can buy the components individually if you only want something for digestive, only want something for the mental health, if you only want something for pre and probiotics, sorry, not pre and probiotics, just the vitamins and minerals. But they do create it, which is one of their most popular products. They make it in what we call the core system, but the way it gets to you is just 2 packages stuck together. You crack them in half. One's your AM, one's your PM. Do you know how many times I run out the door and I just grab the package and stick it in my pocket? And then I know that I get them in them because I haven't needed to like go through and put all the bottles that I need and whatever. It's just there. I
get it.
And for the ADHD brain, you need easy, right? So I take a dropper in the morning. I take my packet in the morning. And then the third thing that sorry, let me go back to core. And my son also takes the kids core. So they make a kids version of the core. And like I'll tell you after for my son, but it's easy peasy. We just mix it in juice. It's a powder, and he's great.
Perfect.
So the other thing I take is collagen, and this is a liquid collagen. It is a safe form of collagen, so it's bovine and poultry. It is not a lot of marine collagens, as much as marine collagen can be fantastic, sourcing can become an issue just because of the metals and things like that, right? So this is an amazing collagen, and super bioavailable, super absorbable, and so I take that 3-part system every single morning. Anybody, and you can attest to this, Tracy, the transformation that I have felt and even people have seen in me in the last like 6 weeks has been insane now that I've been taking the system together. I feel the best at 42, the best I have ever felt in my entire life.
When you said that.
And it's like I said, I've had times where I break down in tears, because as somebody who struggle with mental health, and then you struggle with getting up to even get your clothes on, to get exercise, to get work done, to get this struggle to wake up in the morning and go, for all my people, cover your ears, earmuffs, I feel so fucking fantastic. And that you want to scream it from the rooftops. And all it has taken is me getting these products into my home a priority. Like, I can't even. For my son, we used to have breakdowns, like emotional breakdowns, sometimes before and after school. His reading was out to lunch before, his focus was out to lunch, his writing, I mean, he still looks like he writes like a doctor, but can I tell you, since he started this, perfect math tests. He has no issue. His spelling tests are like, he's an 80 and above student.
How old is he again?
He's 8. His reading for the first time in his life is at grade level. We are not behind. Like, I mean, he did have eye surgery, so I mean, we knew to expect a few things, but the ADHD doesn't help. His teacher just recently said, I have zero academic issues with your child whatsoever. And as a kid with ADHD to not have academic issues, which means, and she said, even socially within the class, whatever, does he fidget? Yes. Does he talk too much? Yes. But when I told her that we're doing all these things at home and we suspect we're getting diagnosed ADHD, and I said, I told her, here are some things that you can do. What did she do? She going, okay. So he sits in the corner at the back of the room. She makes sure to check in on him. He's been given the option to stand up out of his desk if he needs to. And she gave him fidget toys to play with.
Awesome.
During class. But I've given him tools now that he actually is calmer. We do not have as many fits in the morning. Like on occasion we do. I don't want to go to school. I want to sleep instead, of course. But I can get him up and out the door within 20 minutes now. If I need to. Which before he was the type of kid where if you tried to push him, he put the brakes on and he would lay in the middle of the floor and scream.
Wow.
He would come home from school every single day because he was emotionally holding it together to be the perfect kid, right? And he would cry. We'd have a 30-minute cry session for most days. He does not do that anymore.
Incredible.
So I could go on and on. Like I literally could go on and on about me, but here's the thing. In the chat groups on our teams, from the ambassadors, Q Science ambassadors from the US and whatever, I have threads and pages worth of the same kinds of testimonies.
Amazing.
And so it's now something where I've been like, I need to scream this from the rooftops, because how many people can I support with a bottle or a bag or whatever? And then, I mean, and they have so many other amazing products as well, like to help, support a variety of other things. They have organic greens, they have mushrooms, they have an amazing mushroom complex that tastes like chai tea. So if you love chai, they have that. Like they have meal replacements that I'm gonna have to try, because it's kind of like a protein shake, but for people like us who are like, I need something on the go that I can throw in a bottle of water because I forgot to eat.
Yeah.
Like everything that they do is simplicity and absorption. So I'm gonna get what I need easily.
I love that.
And it works. Like
simple, absorbable.
Yeah. And the last thing actually I want to share just about them is the sublingual vitamins. So they have vitamins in sprays.
I didn't know that.
Spray under your tongue. Yep. So they have B vitamins, C, they have a sleep formula, they have a relief formula, and literally it's in a spray. You spray it right under your tongue or on your tongue, and they are like phenomenal. So if you're somebody who can't take pills, we have help. If you're somebody who has issues with sleep, your brain's running, your whatever, we have help. If you have a child who you can't take to, sometimes they don't like the taste of those multivitamins or anything like that, there's stuff you can do. And a lot of their products are kid friendly. We use the same terpenes on us as we do on Grayson. We just give him a little bit less. I use all the sublingual vitamins on Grayson if I need to. We just give him fewer sprays. I
love that.
It's easy, it's available, it's simple.
That I didn't know that part, and it's really great for a lot of people, because also it just gets into your blood system faster. It doesn't have to go through your digestive system and get processed by your liver and all those kind of things. It's there quite quickly. The reason why people get nitroglycerin for their angina that they put under their tongue, it's the same premise.
So the terpenes are also the chill and the create that I talked about. Those are sublingual as well. So as long, I mean, yes, is the best way to stick them underneath your tongue, sit there and wait for it to absorb in as long as possible. Yes. But if you shoot them on your tongue and swallow it back, I will tell you, we don't have an issue. kid is doing phenomenal, and so
I
are
love
we.
that.
Yeah.
I think you're on to something with this company that you have discovered. And like you said, I've seen a massive change in you. And especially just navigating, the last couple of months have not been super easy with just some other work that we've been working on as well too. So it's been, you and I are both going through major transitions in our personal businesses, and
I think the thing is too, is when you get yourself, and you know this, when you start to heavily take care of yourself and ensure that your body feels good, you get clarity of mind in all kinds of other areas of your life. You are out of analysis paralysis. You are into action making and making bold decisions that feel good for you.
yeah.
I think it impacts every other area. And it also is easier to ensure that your brain is functioning the way it should, and you're not so hard on yourself at the
Well, a
same
lot
time.
of these products too, they're working on your nervous system, and that is a problem in this world. Like the amount of stress that people are, they don't even realize that their nervous systems are fried. They have no reserves.
Well, the amount of inflammation our bodies have in them, that we're all walking around with like so much inflammation in our body. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And between that, the stress on our body from that, and then the stress on our body from our nervous systems being just shot on a regular basis. And I say this to a lot of clients that come to me for energy work, and like I said, they've done with talk therapy, it's not supporting, is that we hold so much emotion in our body. Now, if our bodies are inflamed and our nervous system is running on fight or flight continuously, that's where we're living. What do you think happens? How do you think can you process emotions? No, you have zero ability to do that, because the minute something, you are living at the tip of the iceberg, and everything is just triggering you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A great example I noticed even for myself was just say road rage. Like, I used to be like that Toronto driver when I used to live there that would be screaming at anybody and driving super aggressively. Like, not as bad as some people, obviously, but now I'm like not a couple weeks ago, I think I was telling you this. We were taking Kevin to work one morning. We almost got T-boned in an intersection. We were turning left, and I was just like I was kind of freaked out when it first happened, but then my system just calmed down. Like, I don't get those big spikes anymore of just like the adrenaline flows in and the heart rate goes up. It just doesn't work like that for me as much anymore.
Right?
And it's a nicer way to live.
Well, but I equate it sometimes to having like an out of body experience, where once your nervous system starts to come back down to a place where like homeostasis, where a place where it was to begin with, you start to start being able to almost be in an experience without reacting, and just kind of take notice of what's going around you. And it's like you're standing there and surveying from above, but you're actually there. It's so weird. And that's the experience we should all have in moments where we're not immediately going into, oh my God, panic, the world, the sky, we're Chicken Littles, the sky is falling.
Well, it gives you the ability to maintain perspective. Okay, this is going on. Let's deal with it however it needs to be done, and not let it ruin our day.
Well, but even for the big stuff, right? It allows you to it allows you to cope with your big stuff a lot easier, and then your body doesn't break down emotionally, physically, all those things at the same time.
You said earlier, you're healthier.
And I'm going to say this, I'm going to throw this out there, I'm probably going to end up causing havoc with this one, but
that's okay.
You know why I start talking to people about, they say, oh my God, it was a miracle. This person, they had cancer, and they went and they did these natural treatments. They were taking care of their bodies, they were doing all these things. Yes, they went for chemo and did whatever, but they were doing, and then it was just gone. It was just like magically gone, and she shouldn't have, it's something she should have been with for the rest of her life. Or like we see these, like, I want to call them miracle healings that people talk about, right? And I go, these aren't miracle healings. I said, the body knows how to heal itself. I said, all that happened was her body was originally in a state of homeostasis. It was capable of taking what you gave it and said, okay, I got this. I need some other support, but I got this and I can overcome this. Absolutely. Well, when these crazy things like happen and your body's all full of inflammation and in fight or flight mode and whatever, and you add on to it, what is it going to do? It shuts down like we do. Yes. It's like, now done, zero, press the power button, not restarting.
Yeah, you made me think of, even like, if people even want to look at examples that look really crazy, dive into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. Like, he looks like, if you didn't know, or if you don't know him, like, it could come off as like evangelical, like those old school, like, I bless you and you're healed kind of business, but it's all scientifically backed, the power of like mindset and calibrating your heart frequency and what that does.
But that goes back to everything vibrates. Yes. And our bodies are actually tuned to vibrate at a certain frequency in health. When we don't vibrate, or rather, if we don't emit that frequency, function at that frequency, if we go into certain ranges, they're detrimental to our health. Just like 5G and EM, why am I calling it? The frequencies from our phones and stuff like that. EMFs, right? EMFs? Yeah. Okay. I thought I was losing my mind for a minute.
Or bombarded constantly, right? Like radio waves, microwaves, all the things. There's just...
Right. So those affect our bodies because our body doesn't naturally function at that. But when you introduce scientific, here's the nerd, the engineer in me, when you combine two frequencies, two waves together, they change the wave. It becomes two become one in a different wave pattern, right?
Amplitude changes. This is the thing, we didn't tell people, like, we're two science geeks. Like, you're the retired engineer, I'm the retired respiratory therapist, both with extensive educations too. So
yes, you combine those things, and we expect that our bodies are going to function in perfect harmony if we do nothing but live this world. And that's not the truth of the matter. Absolutely. I like to, with everything that's going on in the world, there's, my mom, who's a retired nurse, she likes to come a lot of times, and she's like, oh my God, did you hear what happened? She watches the news way too much. And she's like, this, amazing athlete, vegan, this, that, whatever, just dropped out of a heart attack while he was running a marathon. And I go, and I said, guess what? His body probably his nervous system was probably fight or flight, a lot of stress, a lot of cortisol running through his body. Athletes generally have that, number one. Number two, he probably had a lot of trauma within the body. Energy workers know this. A lot of trauma within the body. What happens when you hold trauma? And you may not even know about your trauma. Trauma can be passed down in your DNA and in your cells. So don't think that, oh, I have had nothing happen to me. Good Lord, it could be from generations ago.
We're going to go there, actually. So that's where
okay, good segue.
This is where you're actually setting me up for the perfect segue into where I wanted to go.
My psychic abilities are on point today. So we hold all of that trauma, and guess what? That prevents our body from communicating within itself appropriately, which means that any tiny little thing can strike us down and have us get very sick, die unexpectedly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things can happen. And so I think part of our health needs to be looking at those alternative therapies, because we need to release trauma from our bodies. Just general. And I use the word trauma as a means to talk about communication and energy blocks within the body, and not necessarily an experience that we have had.
Sure. I've heard a great definition from Karen Curry Parker from the human design world. Because she talks a lot about trauma too, and she will say that it's anything that happened to you that didn't allow you to express yourself authentically in that moment.
Oh, yes.
So it can be on so many levels, whether like people, I hate when people do like big T and little T traumas. And I'm like, who's you? What's to say your big T isn't my little T, or vice versa, right?
Well, I like to give people the example that is, when you were 3, you stubbed your toe. Okay. Stubbing your toe, how many of us stub our toe like all the time? Yeah. Inconsequential to life, right? Your toe wasn't broken, it was a little bruised, you cried.
Yeah.
Inconsequential. Guess what?
But when you were 3, it was everything.
No, but you got over it.
Yes.
You're fine, right? But guess what? Your body has harbored that, and as an adult, all of a sudden you start having foot problems. And you're like, why am I having foot problems? And you go to the chiropractor, and you go to the doctor, and you go to all the things, and there's nothing wrong with your foot at all, but you have foot pain. There's nothing wrong. You've x-rays, you have an MRI of your foot, foot's fine. You go see an energy worker of some sort, a body talker, a Reiki master, whatever you want to call it, and all of a sudden, one session later, and foot doesn't hurt anymore.
Well, it's like if anybody ever dives into what, like, homeopathy and what all these alternative medicines are all about. You said it earlier, that everything vibrates, everything is energy and has frequency, and that's what those things are working on. Because their idea is that we have our body, but then we have these energetic fields around us, and for something to present in our body means the injury happened out here too, where we didn't know, and that's where that stuff's working on it. It just takes, and that's why it can take 30 days, 3 months before you start to physically notice. Doesn't mean the energy is not being improved, but it's great because now we have things that can work more instantaneously to help support you get to those further points.
Well, also too, though, in this day and age, how many people actually sit and listen to their bodies anymore?
Not how many people I know.
But it's all about suck it up, buttercup, push through it. Like, I'm not, if I say to you, I'm not, you know what, I'm just feeling off today. How many times, I mean, I don't do this anymore, but previously I'd be like, you know what, I feel terrible. I think I should just stay home, but no, I'll push through it because I haven't seen this person, or they're having this, or they're doing that, and I should do it for them. I feel bad, I'll just suck it up. And then I end up getting sick or something else happens. And it's like, we have made it in our society that actually listening to our bodies and listening to how we're feeling is wrong, and you are a weakling and you suck, and like we've I'm missing a word in my brain right now. That's another ADHD thing. We've praised people and put people on the pedestal who work those 80-hour weeks and are never take times for themselves, and never and never listen to their bodies, and just go. And we've said people who aren't team, we've called them the team player. You're not a team player if you're like have boundaries.
That's right. You're selfish.
You're selfish. I tell all of my clients that if there's one thing you take away from any time with me, is that you will learn to be selfish, because that means that you've actually decided to take care of yourself and listen to your body and your needs.
Common conversation with my clients as well.
Yeah.
Common. Love it. Okay. So do you want to
diving in?
Yeah. Do you want to go here? So this is, I've never done this to you before, but I know I can. So I only prefaced it to Candice this morning by, do you want to see an example of my favorite channel in HD? So if you don't understand HD, human design, and you want to know more later on, that's fine. I've got places I can send you, but just sit back and listen, because this is my favorite channel I have. I can't remember what the numbers are, but I know it's called the Freak to Genius channel.
The Freak to Genius channel.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sure there's lots of people that have it. So I don't remember the gates that are involved, but basically one of the gates is in what they call like your ajna, or your third eye, and it's connected to another gate in your throat.
Okay.
So when people have this gate, they tend to be able to take really interesting ideas and kind of bring them together. So if they are in a place where they can, we have to wait to be recognized to be able to express it and have an audience that's open to hearing it. So if the person isn't open to hearing it, I will sound like a freak. If the person is open to hearing what I have to say, they'll think I'm a genius. So it's you tend to fall in one camp or the other when I throw these kind of things out there. So you set it up perfectly when you started talking about DNA and frequency right before that. So and people can look into this kind of stuff if they want to. I'm not going to like source it all or anything like that. So we know about epigenetics, for example. That's what you were talking about, is that you inherit things, but at the same time, like you might inherit genetic expressions or things, but your environment still plays a role. So it doesn't necessarily mean like because your mom's got the gene for breast cancer doesn't mean you're going to get it necessarily. So in a course I took last year with Karen Curry-Perker, so it was one of her human design courses, was on healing the witch wound. And she prefaced the whole course by telling us about DNA. Now she's another science nerd as well too, so she goes right down those like advanced degrees and things on things like this. So she was telling us about some research that our DNA carries up to 14 generations of information. So in the context of that course, she was basically saying, so we all have a witch wound. Someone in their lineage was killed for being a witch, just because of the time that we've lived in and whatever that is. So it just gets, when I hear things like this, I just kind of ponder them, because I have a very scientific background as well. And then you mix it with the more like energetics and spiritual side and all of those things. And that's where it just kind of starts to come together. So this is where I've been going lately, because I've been doing some deep dives into galactic astrology, and this issue keeps coming up around autism and ADHD. So they will talk about, now this is where some people will just go, I don't even want to listen to this, because you need to be able to, it depends on your beliefs. So if you are of more of the belief that you decided to be here, you're a soul that's been incarnated on this earth for whatever reason, and that you've come from somewhere else, you need to be able to kind of go there first. So they will talk about.
I've already gone there.
You have gone there, I know that, but for anybody listening, they might, if they just want to shut off now, because it's going to go really up there. So in that world, they talk about these three waves of what they call volunteers that have arrived on this planet. And I don't know, like I can't remember all the different time frames that they talk about. I'm
in one of those time frames.
You are.
I am, because I'm a soul that's in a human form for the very first time.
Oh, interesting. Whereas I think I've been multiple, so it's interesting. So this is where you might have to help me stay on track with these sometimes too, though. So because I kind of lose my train of thought on these things. So if you're open to that you can be here. Oh, I'm losing my train on this already. Oh no, the three waves of volunteers.
Yes.
So long story short, the way that they're talking about it, they're relating it to DNA. So if you think about evolution, our DNA is changing.
Yes.
Obviously, with lots of different things because of the way we live. We have so much more access to clean water and things like that. Our genes have to change. We live a lot longer. But wouldn't it be interesting to think about that these DNA things that we have carry different frequencies, and that maybe we're not all the same? So maybe this group of us, because I almost feel like it's a very almost generational thing, of these Generation X, maybe millennials, maybe boomers, I don't know, of I'm having a hard time sticking with this. ADHD, we're kind of like this generation that maybe our DNA is a little bit different. It resonates at a different frequency. So and that's absolutely why we're not that it's a great example. We're not neurotypical. We have evolved. And not all evolution is good or bad necessarily either, but we've changed so we just resonate differently. It's why we don't operate well in certain environments. Take that a step further. So now they're talking about more of this, like, so we would be, I think, kind of more the second wave. Mm-hmm. The third wave they talk about is autism. That these kids now have this DNA or whatever it is resonating at such a high frequency that they're just not interested in what the rest of what we think they should be interested in. It's why some of them don't communicate well, because it's almost like they don't communicate the way we do. And there's talk of that maybe in time, as we all kind of, whatever it is, awaken, as we start to rise up, that they will actually communicate more through lights and other things.
It's so funny that you say that, because it logically, from a both energetic and scientific point of view, makes perfect sense.
I knew it would make sense to you.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense that we are evolving in each wave to a point where I'm going to say this, like, almost as if they've taken things that we have not appropriately used or have abused in our lifetimes and have changed it because it's no longer deemed beneficial to our existence. So, like, our ability to communicate, words, people don't listen to words anymore. No. And so nonverbals, you have to really pay attention to a lot of things in order to communicate properly with them. Correct?
Yeah.
So this is almost as if they're coming as a means to go, you need to get out of your own head, out of your own box, and understand that the way that you've been doing things is actually going to kill off the human population.
I knew, and I just got goosebumps when you said that. So I knew that you would resonate with that, because it's kind of out there that, you know, because I can't imagine having a child with autism. I've seen some crazy things, and I can't imagine how difficult that would be. But I also think it's difficult because you're trying to force them into a box that they don't want to be in, that they're not designed to be in.
But even within autism in and of itself, there is such a large spectrum. Like, there are people who function as if they're neurotypical day in and day out. You would never know in a million years. There are people who are complete opposite and are essentially, you know, a certain, I don't mean to say this, but I have a lack of a better explanation on this. But we'll say they're in a type of vegetative state, in the sense that they only have a very limited amount of neurotypical functionality. Okay. Not to say that their brain is not just wildly intuitive, amazing, intelligent, but that their ability to function within their ability for their brain to function neurotypically so that they can function in society is very, very limited. And I feel like instead of us taking a step back and studying all this, because autism is considered being neurodivergent. The same as ADHD, which a lot of people don't know that. They assume it to be a disorder, a dysfunction. It is not. It is just neurodivergence. The brain does not function the way that that we have said it was designed to function, right? So again, it's all about taking the brain, putting it in a box, going, how many of these things that I have said, that somebody back in the day, some Bob Schmo said, this is what a normal brain is supposed to do. And when this neuron fires, this body part is supposed to do this, and when this neuron fires, this brain body part is supposed to that, or they're supposed to say words, or they're supposed to whatever. And it's almost as if instead of I've heard people equate neurodivergence to a computer having a virus. And I don't think that's
like
the case. I believe neurodivergence is your computer amplified, evolved.
It just works differently. Yeah.
It just works differently. The problem is we haven't figured out how to apply or use that supercomputer in today's society.
Not yet, exactly. So I feel like we will. I really do feel like
but we try and fix people
when they don't necessarily need to be fixed.
But the only way we need to, I want to say this, the only way we need to, I want to say fix people, because I say I fix myself, I help, I support people with this stuff. It's bringing them back to homeostasis from all aspects of their living. So, but my homeostasis and your homeostasis and my husband's, my kids, it's all different.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that I think there should be no neurotypical.
Right.
We are all neurodivergent. We are all, we all don't, there's no box to put anybody in. We have our own set of criteria and lists. It's about acceptance. It's about learning how to function with each other instead.
And that's why I love going out into these really obscure ideas and going like, but what if it was supposed to be like that? Like, doesn't it just changes the way you would go and look at something like autism?
Well, it changes the way you look at anything in society, like everything, like somebody's skin, somebody's ethnic food, somebody's this. Like, I still don't understand why. Yes, I understand why we put labels on things, because it makes it easier to explain something. If generally you fit into this box, I can categorize you as something.
It's the language that we have as humans to communicate, that we all know.
Yes.
We have to have some words, but then we've been talking a lot about this in our circle too, about just, there's also frequency of words, and there's low frequency words and high frequency words, and that all plays a part. That's why we could sit here forever doing this, but
it's just like want and can't is like, I tell people all the time, well, when you say those words, they vibrate at nothing, at death, at the same level as death.
Yeah, my favorite is never. I hate the word. I shouldn't say it. I do not attempt to use the word never in a sentence, because it's like, who am I to say that this thing will never happen?
Well, yeah, because I don't know in 10 years. There's a lot of things we probably said as like teenagers we would never ever do, and here we are eating our words. Like
this time last year, I had no idea I'd be moving to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Wasn't even on my radar.
And had somebody said, are you going to move? You're like, no.
Probably would have said no. I wouldn't have said never, but it wasn't on the radar.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
No, and I think though, I mean, if the last 3 years have taught us, 2-3 years have taught us anything, 2 years have taught us anything, it's that you need to be open and receptive to everything, and not poo-poo it, and not judge it, and not condemn it, because tomorrow's a new day, and who knows what's going to show up on your doorstep, and where you're going to be, and what decisions you're going to need to make to ensure that you feel safe and secure and taken care of.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that. It's probably a really good spot, I think, just to go. I think that's good.